Now it's time for Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf, the #1 relationship advice radio show in the U.S.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ask Dr. Love. It's my pleasure to be with you again this week. We're streaming live right now on the Ask Dr. Love YouTube channel. And then this show, as all shows, broadcasts starting the following Thursday through Tuesday in 5 of the top 10 U.S. terrestrial radio markets, reaching 40 million listeners. We air in Chicago, Atlanta, San Francisco, and Boston, and also Seattle, San Bernardino, and LA. And the audio and video recordings of the shows are posted on the weekly show page on Ask Dr. Love. You can also grab show recordings on Spotify, iHeart, Podbean, and all your favorite podcast apps. And we also have the TV show out on Binge Networks TV. And remember, submit your questions to me to askdrlove.com/questions. I'll do my best to answer your questions on air, which is what I'll be doing later in the show today, after we tackle the topic that I want to discuss, which is healing grief over a loved one who died of COVID. Now, the statistics say that 1.1 million US deaths have been attributed to COVID-19. And I'm not going to get into the debate of whether the stats are accurate or whether many deaths were wrongly attributed to COVID. The fact remains, there are countless millions of people worldwide who are grieving lost loved ones, especially in the last couple of years. So today I want to talk to you about death, dying, and grief. And I want to preface by telling you a little bit about how I have come to specialize in helping people heal the pain of grief. Because as you're going to soon realize, my own grief is how this story begins. When I was a really little girl, I had a detailed premonition of the man I was going to marry one day. I actually saw his face, I saw his body, and I decided I'm just going to wait. I'm not going to date, I wait. Now that's a very medieval concept for a girl growing up in the 70s, but I did wait, and Jean did appear on the first day of my freshman year at Vassar College. I had been shut out of all intro sociology, and I really wanted to take Soch. And the secretary of the department, her name was Judy Cadwallader, never forget it. She said I should ask the chair of the department, Jean Pain, if he could find a seat for me in one of the closed sections. Well, the minute I stepped into Jean's office, I had the first and only out-of-body experience of my life. I literally felt my soul shoot at high speed through a tunnel to the end of my life, and I saw a white light, and then I rapidly shot back into my body, and I received the message, remember every aspect of this meeting, he will be everything to you one day. That's your average first day of college, right? Now, amazingly, I forgot about that message, and I just went about my life as a first-year college student. But I will tell you that soon after meeting Jean, I had heard through the college grapevine that for most of his life, Jean had been one of the most famous Jesuit priests in history. He had taught at the University of the Vatican, called the Gregorian University, and he founded a movement called liberation theology, designed to fight church oppression from within. He was a radical feminist Jesuit priest, and he didn't want to see women trapped in marriages where they were being abused. So he fought on the grounds of liberation theology, religious freedom. The church should butt out of the private sector. And he had a big fight on his hands because the church and the Pope, they were trying to block the legalization of divorce. And his fight against the Pope and the Catholic Church was successful. He got the divorce bill passed. He changed the course of Italian history. And soon after, the Pope granted him the dispensation of his vows so that he wouldn't be excommunicated. He left the Jesuit order and the priesthood, and he was recruited by Vassar College to be the chair of the Department of Sociology. Now, 4 years after our fateful meeting, when I was in my senior year at Vassar, I needed help with the statistical portion of my thesis. And I had also heard through the Vassar gossip grapevine that Jean had been a famous statistician, having founded the Vatican's first and only social research center. Now, even though he wasn't my advisor, he cheerfully gave me his time. And in a few weeks, we just knew we were meant for each other. And from that moment on, we were inseparable for nearly 40 years. We wrote books together, we restored houses together, and we rejoiced in every moment that we spent together. In the last year of Jean's bodily life, we both started having privately premonitions that he was going to leave his body from an accident. Note, I don't say die, because in fact, I've created a new language taxonomy to speak about quote unquote death and dying. We don't die, we just leave our bodies. And Jean and I did not know when or where this tragedy was going to happen. On the day that we were planning our departure for our summer vacation in Europe, lightning struck the rose arbor in our backyard and just decimated it. And then I saw 40 huge black crows in the backyard. And I thought, this is an omen. This is not good. We boarded the plane all the same. And one day, while we were sitting on the beach in Sperlonga, Italy, Jean's hand was up over his eyes as if to block the rays of the sun, when suddenly a bee swooped down and stung my Jean's hand at the exact location of Christ's stigmata. And I watched my beloved suffocate in front of my eyes. Well, how can I describe to you what this trauma, I was hysterical. I was absolutely hysterical. And I went back to my hotel room and I just collapsed on the bed and I was shaking and trembling and crying. And suddenly I felt a hand stroke the entire length of my spine. I shot bolt upright. I looked over my shoulder. I obviously didn't see anything, but I knew that it was Jean. Now, I have to also tell you, for my entire life, I was a devoutly atheist person. I didn't believe in God or the afterlife. And Jean and I, despite our very different backgrounds, we never discussed religion. From that moment on, when I felt Jean's hand stroke my spine, he started making his presence known to me. He started moving objects, turning lights on and off, machines on and off, often in front of witnesses. His manifestations were over the top, I discovered, because he wanted me to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we don't die. And one day, soon after he left his body, he said to me, "Jamie, tell our story. Let our love shine like a torch that lights the path for others." So to honor Jean's wish, that is exactly what I did. And based upon my discovery that we don't die, we just leave our bodies, I also discovered that our relationships are not meant to end with bodily death. Because as I discovered, when we form a bond with another person, our souls are bonded for eternity. And that means we're not meant to be separated from those we love. And contrary to popular belief, time does not ease grief. In fact, time actually makes us miss our loved ones even more, because we are not meant to be separated from those we love. And reconnecting and staying connected is the only way to end the grief. So I developed the transdimensional grief resolution method. It's a totally new kind of grief therapy method that combines my conflict resolution method with after-death communication. The transdimensional grief resolution method enables anyone who's grieving to reconnect and even heal unfinished business with anyone in spirit. Hay House introduced my story and the new transdimensional grief resolution method in my book, Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. And this book became a #1 international bestseller. And for nearly 3 years, I hosted the Love Never Dies show on Hay House Radio Network. And I traveled the world giving talks and workshops, helping people Bob, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Wow.
Yes.
Some real editing in the studio, let me tell you. Experience. Bob, Liz, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly, Dr. Jamie. Yeah.
Bob, Liz,
Yeah.
anybody? Can you
Yeah.
guys hear me?
You can't hear us.
Oh, I wanted to know where you heard me last so that I don't repeat myself. Can you hear me? This has never happened in all the years I've done a show from home. ever. I'm wondering if we have to start over, for heaven's sake. Okay, so Bob, please, can you tell me what the last thing you heard was before I lost my audio?
Yes, I will tell you. Can you hear me?
And then we'll just cut out all this technical stuff when we do the editorial work before we send off the show to the terrestrial stations. Liz, can you hear me? I see someone in the studio and I was wondering if somebody could help me out here, please. What was the last thing you heard before you were on, but we're not supposed to be disconnected. What? Oh, we're not supposed to be disconnected. All righty, thanks. So yeah, because I don't want to reiterate myself. So what I was saying is we are not supposed to be disconnected from the people we love. And in fact, time makes grief worse because we form a bond for eternity with the other person that we love. Time actually makes us miss the person we love even more because we are not meant to be separated from those we love, and reconnecting and staying connected is the only way to end the grief. So I developed the transdimensional grief resolution method. It's a totally new kind of grief therapy that combines my conflict resolution method with the world of after-death communication. And the result is my method allows you to reconnect and even heal unfinished business with anyone in spirit. And Hay House introduced my story and new transdimensional grief resolution method in my book, Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. And the book became the #1 international bestseller. And for nearly 3 years, I hosted Love Never Dies, the #1 show on the Hay House Radio Network. And I traveled the world, giving talks and workshops, helping people all over the world reconnect and heal unfinished business with their loved ones in spirit. And each week on the show, on Hay House, I would tell my latest manifestation stories and take live calls, and I couldn't handle all the calls, which showed me how many people are grieving and hungry to reconnect. So to honor this tradition of sharing manifestation stories, I want to tell you a couple of sweet stories that happened just this week. The first was this past weekend. Something really amazing happened. I sensed that Jean was asking me to take my bike over to the next to my house. There's a wooden walkway that spans the water, and I was lying on the bench reading. And after a while, I heard footsteps that approached and stopped. And I sat up, and a little boy was standing in front of me, a beautiful, almost white-haired blonde boy of about 3 or 4. Was perched in front of me. And I asked him, "Are you with your family?" And he said his mom and dad and grandmother and brother were coming along. And I asked him, "Well, do you live here or are you visiting?" And he said, no, he was on vacation. And then his dad arrived and all by himself. And I said, "Dad, he is so adorable. He's so outgoing for a boy his age." And then he said to me, "I don't know your name." And I thanked him for reminding me that I neglected to introduce myself. And after a quick chat, his family moved on. And several minutes later, the boy ran back to me all by himself. And I asked him if he had returned to say goodbye. And he said, yes. And I said, "It was so wonderful meeting you." And I said, "You touched my heart. I'll never forget you." And he said something that I will never forget for the rest of my life. He said, "I think I filled your bucket and you filled mine." And I could feel in that moment Jean's love pouring through this sweet, open vessel. That's a term that I coined for those who are open to receiving and communicating messages from our loved ones in spirit. Open vessels are animals, domestic and wild, young children, the very old, the sick, and the disabled. And I truly won't forget this visit for the rest of my life. Now, another thing that happened last week happened with a woman I'm going to call B. She's an online love club group member, and she was grieving her beloved kitty, who's named Dolly. And that kitty just dropped dead without warning a couple of days prior to the online group. I was sitting outside on my lanai with the entire remote group online, and she was just crying to me and the group. And I said to her, your little kitty, Dolly, is with us. She is with us. And at that moment, a red cardinal landed right next to me. So the cardinal was the open vessel for Kitty. And I said, I want you to feel that Kitty is with you still, sitting with you as she always sat with you when she was in a body. And at that moment, another group member's dog named Quincy, and this dog is the most hyper, insane dog on the planet, barking incessantly, never sits still, and that dog came right up to the screen, sat down, and put his head right on Tim's shoulder and just sat with us. So now Quincy was coming through just like I had said Dolly was coming through. And these little open vessel animals were showing her Dolly was coming through. Remember, she's still here. She just left her body. Isn't that an amazing story? Really beautiful. And the reason I'm telling you these two stories is so that it opens your eyes to the reality of what's going on around you every minute. Your loved ones in spirit are all around you, whether they're human, whether they're animal. They want to reconnect with you. So the real issue is, really now, why don't most people routinely reconnect with their loved ones in spirit? And the reason is, I discovered there are so many false beliefs that block reconnecting. So I'm going to take a little break. When I come back, we're going to talk about some of these false beliefs that prevent you from reconnecting and healing your grief. Alrighty? And also, keep in mind that after we finish today's topic, I'm going to be answering your questions. Alrighty? So we'll be back with you in a moment on Ask Dr. Love.
To expand across the USA? Ask Dr. Love broadcasts in 5 of the top 10 U.S. radio markets, reaching 40 million listeners, offering you a unique opportunity to reach out to almost every adult listening group for a surprisingly reasonable rate. Everyone is concerned about their relationships. There is no other radio relationship advice show presented anywhere else in the USA. By advertising on Ask Dr. Love, your company can reach an audience that no other show touches. Visit AskDrLove.com and fill out the contact form to get in on this tremendous opportunity. Fill out the contact form at AskDrLove.com right now and get all the details. Will it be your company that gets to take advantage and grow your business? You're listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If your heart is still hurting over the bodily loss of your loved one, the reason is simple. We're not meant to be separated from those we love, and reconnecting is the only way to end the grief. But reconnecting and staying connected requires guidance. As a gift to her listeners, Dr. Turndorf is offering a limited number of discounted grief relief sessions to help you reestablish your relationship and resolve any unfinished issues. If you're ready to experience the healing and joy of reconnecting, visit drjamieturndorf.com to schedule your session. But don't wait, space is limited. Visit askdrlove.com/grief relief to find out more. And now, back to Dr. Turndorf.
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Love. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and we're talking about how to heal your grief over the loss of a loved one by reconnecting. So what we're talking about now is why so many people don't reconnect with loved ones in spirit as a result of the false beliefs that they carry that block reconnecting. After Jean left his body in 2006, I discovered that most people are riddled with incorrect beliefs that block our ability to communicate with spirit beings. So I want to familiarize with you with each of these false beliefs so we can debunk them and enable you to reconnect and heal your grief. Now, I just want to give you a word of caution. When you're grieving, you're in a vulnerable place. You know this. So I want you to be aware of people in your intimate circle who, however well-meaning, may try to interfere with your efforts to reconnect with those in spirit. Because these well-meaning skeptics, dream stealers, and naysayers are themselves laboring under the same false teachings and incorrect beliefs that I want to free you from. So please be very careful and choose who you tell about what we're talking about, especially in the early stages of your grief. Your heart and your hopes can be so easily dashed by well-meaning friends and family, and I don't want your reconnection to stall as a result of others' interference in the process. So the first obstacle to overcome is the wrong belief that we're not supposed to stay in connection with loved ones in spirit. How do I know that we're supposed to stay in connection with those in spirit? Well, Jean brought me this information the first night that I came back from Italy. I was lying in the bed, not sleeping, and I heard Jean speaking to me from spirit, quoting something I didn't recognize. Now, the next day I went to his priest to prepare the readings for Jean's funeral. I'd never met the priest before, since I never went to church. So when I told the priest that Jean was speaking to me and quoting something, the priest raised his brow in obvious skepticism. I could see he was thinking, this babe's lost her marbles. Then when I told him what Jean was saying, he blanched, he crossed himself, and he said, "Dear God, Jamie, at first I didn't believe that Jean was talking to you, but I do now." He told me I was quoting an obscure biblical passage from the Communion of Saints. Like I would have known, I said I never read the Bible or went to church, and Jean and I didn't discuss religion. It took me a year to understand why Jean chose to quote that and only that passage to me. Remember, he was a religious pioneer in life, and he continues to be in the afterlife. And as I discovered, the passage that he was quoting to me was from the Communion of Saints. And the Communion of Saints says that our loved ones in spirit are one with, or in communion with, God and the saints. And since the Bible says we are supposed to stay in communion and communication with God and the saints, this means that our Bible is telling us that we're supposed to stay in communion and communication with our loved ones in spirit because they are one with God and the saints. So the point is, what we've been told about the afterlife is dead wrong. Pardon my pun. We're not meant to live in an emotional wasteland, separated from those we love, waiting until we quote unquote die and enter heaven. Because as Jean told me, Jamie, death is an illusion. There's a very thin veil between the realm where you are and the realm where I am. The veil is thinner than you can ever imagine. I'm standing right here. And he also told me heaven is a state, not a place. Heaven is all around us. Heaven is here and now. So all this means we are supposed to reconnect with our loved ones in spirit now. Now let me tackle the next false belief that, and this one's a big one, the belief that reconnecting with those in spirit stops us from getting on with our lives. Well, the exact opposite is true. I cannot tell you how many grieving people I have spoken with on Hay House Radio each week for almost 3 years, and some of these people were grieving for decades. And contrary to popular belief, time hasn't healed their grief. Think about it. We never stop loving the people we love who have left their bodies. And if we don't reconnect, as I said earlier, the pain of missing those we love who are in spirit never goes away. Our grief just goes on and on. When we're grieving, we can't enter our lives fully. And now we may go through the motions of living. We may not talk about our loss, but it's still there, dragging us down and preventing us from truly re-entering our lives. And here's the thing. When we focus on our loss, we end up stuck in grief and marinating in misery. So how can you re-enter life when you're pining and grieving? You can't. But here's the great news. reconnecting is the way to re-enter your life. I have personally facilitated thousands of healings in my office, at my live and virtual Love Never Dies retreats, workshops, and the Hay House radio shows. And each time I help a grieving person to reconnect and dialogue with his or her lost loved one, that person's grief is transformed to joy and instantly transformed. So when you reconnect, you discover your loved ones aren't lost at all. And this discovery that can only come from reconnecting is what dissipates the grief. Now you can joyfully re-enter your life rather than limp through your days, dragging your grieving self from moment to moment. Now let me give you another really intense false belief, misconception that prevents reconnecting. Reconnecting with those in spirit, especially life partners and spouses, prevents us from forming another relationship. Well, this one is also totally untrue. Let me give you an analogy that's going to help you understand why. Imagine a woman is thinking of having a second child. Would you ever say to her, "Do you love your first child?" She says, "Yes." Well, if you do, you can't have another child, right? Well, ridiculous, right? The point is, our hearts are made to love. We have enough room in our hearts to love all those who walk on the earth plane and all those who walk in spirit. Now, let me give you another misconception that we need to ditch. If we reconnect with those in spirit, we're preventing them from moving on. This is also completely untrue. First of all, we have to let go of the false belief that spirit moves on at all. So the latest scientific findings help you understand more about the afterlife and where those in spirit reside and the dark matter and all this other stuff, which I'll talk about in another show. But for now, the point to remember is that the afterlife or heaven is here, right here. So when our loved ones leave their bodies, they don't go anywhere. They don't move on to anywhere. Again, Jean said, death is an illusion. There's a very thin veil between the realm where you are and the realm where I am. The veil is thinner than you can ever imagine. I'm standing right here. So once and for all, it's time for the world to embrace the fact that those in spirit don't go anywhere. And a related misconception is the idea that reconnecting impedes those in spirit from moving on and performing their holy work. Well, this one's untrue as well, because it turns out helping us is their holy work. I discovered this truth after the first night back in Italy when Jean told me, "My arms are always open to you. What else is there for me to do? It's my full-time occupation to love you." So everybody needs to know it is their sole purpose to help you travel down the bumpy road called life, to help you fulfill your destiny, to help you heal yourself, body, mind, and spirit. We are their holy work. Let's take a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Are you a business looking to expand across the USA? Ask Dr. Love broadcasts in 5 of the top 10 U.S. radio markets, reaching 40 million listeners, offering you a unique opportunity to reach out to almost every adult listening group for a surprisingly reasonable rate. Everyone is concerned about their relationships. There is no other radio relationship advice show presented anywhere else in the USA. By advertising on Ask Dr. Love, your company can reach an audience that no other show touches. Visit AskDrLove.com and fill out the contact form to get in on this tremendous opportunity. Fill out the contact form at AskDrLove.com right now and get all the details. Will it be your company that gets to take advantage and grow your business? You're listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If your heart is still hurting over the bodily loss of your loved one, the reason is simple. We're not meant to be separated from those we love, and reconnecting is the only way to end the grief. But reconnecting and staying connected requires guidance. As a gift to her listeners, Dr. Turndorf is offering a limited number of discounted grief relief sessions to help you reestablish your relationship and resolve any unfinished issues. If you're ready to experience the healing and joy of reconnecting, visit drjamieturndorf.com to schedule your session. But don't wait, space is limited. Visit AskDrLove.com www.grief.org/grief relief to find out more. And now, back to Dr. Turndorf.
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Love. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and we're talking about how to eradicate the false beliefs and misconceptions that are blocking us from reconnecting. Now, here's another one. Reconnecting to loved ones in spirit opens the door to dark forces and even the devil himself. Now, first of all, I want to tell you, right after Jean left his body, I heard that the Dalai Lama publicly prayed for Jean, naming him as one of the 50 people of all time who was one with God. Now, why do I mention this to you? Because Jean, a man who was one with God, never spoke about the devil or dark forces. Why? Because the devil doesn't exist. Now, it's true that some spirit beings are less evolved than others, but that's a far cry from being devils. And guess what? You don't have to interact with them at all. Think about the analogy of call blocking on a telephone. We, as intelligent human beings, have the ability to set boundaries for ourselves, just as we can screen our incoming calls and refuse access to unwanted callers. The same can be done with unwanted spirit presences. Don't ever forget that your heart has the ability to discern the difference between love and evil, if there is such a thing, and you can simply refuse incoming messages that you don't want to receive. I can't deny that evil spirits may exist. I just know that I have never had to deal with them. Jean acts as my gatekeeper, and his love guards me against any negative presences, if there are any. And your loved ones in spirit are equally devoted to protecting you. Love always triumphs over evil. Now, I'm also going to throw you a big curveball right now. Dark forces and devils are actually a projection of our own unwanted and unrecognized dark sides. Now stay with me for a sec. One of the ways that the psyche tries to rid us of unwanted anger is to project it out onto others. So in this way, we don't have to keep feelings that we don't want to have. Instead of saying we have a dark side, our unwanted dark side is now projected outward, and we're talking about evil forces and devils, when in fact we're actually talking about a projected, unwanted part of ourselves we don't want to own. And in addition to projection, another way that the psyche handles unwanted anger is to bury it. When we bury our anger, the unconscious part of the psyche that has, there's a part of the psyche that I call like a heat-seeking missile function. The unconscious knows we're carrying emotional heat and that it's lurking inside of us, and the psyche punishes us for it. It's as if the mind is saying, you have a dirty secret. You're evil in your heart. You deserve to be punished. Now, if you have a religious background, the payment or the punishment takes the form of fearing that the devil or the dark forces are going to get you. But if you don't have a religious background, then the psyche is going to find a secular form of punishment that is self-styled to get you where you live. So, for example, one of my patients who was filled with buried anger found her life in shambles because she couldn't drive or fly for fear of dying in a crash. It was as if her psyche was saying, you're a bad person for harboring buried anger. You deserve to die in a crash. So her fear made her stop flying and driving, and that fear-driven punishment ruined her life. But what's so amazing is each time I help a patient realize that he or she is sitting on a mountain of buried anger, and I help that person bring the anger to the light of day, the heat-seeking missile function vaporizes, and suddenly the fear of being punished by devils, dark forces, cars, planes, or whatever your personal hell is just goes away. So if you're afraid that reconnecting is going to bring the devil to your door, please do some self-examination, and I bet you're going to find buried anger is the source of your fear. And when you find the anger, bring that anger to your conscious awareness, and you're going to see that your psyche stops torturing you with the threat of devils or dark forces or custom tailored torments. What if buried anger isn't the underlying cause of your fear of the devil and dark forces? What if your fear comes from a Christian upbringing? Well, Christians are told outright that the devil can masquerade as our deceased loved ones. I discovered this after Jean left his body. Now that's enough to put the fear of God or the devil in anyone. And to this day, I'm told that the church still instills this medieval fear of devil worship and spirit possession. And I've also been told that the official church party line is, it's okay to speak to God and the saints, but the list of who else you may communicate in the spirit realm with ends there. Now, why would the church want to instill the fear of the devil in us? Jean told me after he left his body, there's big money in fear. That's his words. There's big money in fear. What he means is, if we believe what the church says, that the devil can masquerade as our loved ones in spirit, then we will never consider establishing our own direct relationship with spirit. And so, in other words, instilling the fear leads to our believing that we have no choice but to rely on a priest to act as our intercessor to God and spirit. And this fear forces us to keep coming back to church and keeps making donations that fill the church's coffers. That's what John meant by there's big business in fear. Now, I have two more misconceptions I want to debunk, and then we're going to answer questions for the rest of the show. The next misconception is, once your loved one is in heaven, he or she is out of reach and unable to communicate with you. Now, after Jean left his body in 2006, I discovered many Christians are riddled with this false belief, and this one really blocks our ability to communicate with spirit. On more than one occasion since Jean left his body, priests have said to me, the spirit lingers close to the earth for a short while after death, and after that our loved ones are in heaven and they're forever out of reach. And so one day I went back to speak with Jean's priest, and I was excited to share with him more details of Jean's ongoing messages and manifestations. And the priest said, when he enters heaven, these manifestations are going to stop, and you're going to only find him again when you are reunited with him in heaven. Well, I was so bothered by this. And I heard Jean say, this is when I heard him say, heaven is a state, not a place, Jamie. Where would I go? I have nowhere to go but to be with you. My full-time occupation is to love you. Later that day, I was in my office, ready to start a group in person. And a new patient of mine named Ashley was the first to arrive. She didn't know Jean or me at all, and she certainly didn't know that I was widowed. As we waited for the other members of the group to arrive in person, we heard the chiming sound that my burglar alarm system emitted when the front door opened. Then we heard loud footsteps. The footsteps stopped in the waiting room outside my group room. I said to Ashley, it must be another patient who got his appointment time wrong. At that moment, we heard the footsteps again, but they sounded like they were leaving. I jumped up, I opened the door to the waiting room to speak to the patient, but there was no one there. I went to the front door and I opened it. There was nobody outside and no parked car. And my house, where my office was located, had a very long driveway. No one could have had the time to reach his car and drive off in the few seconds it took me to get to the front door and open it. And I realized that was Jean's answer to the priest's wrong statement that once I'm in heaven, you're not going to hear from me anymore. I returned to the group room and I told my patient there was no one there. And she said it was a spirit. So that was Jean's answer. Did you hear those footsteps? I'm right here. So he doesn't want you to believe that when your loved ones are in heaven, they are out of reach, condemning you to live in an emotional wasteland in which your relationships are held in suspension and suspense until you're reunited in death. Let's take a break. We'll be back. I want to get to some of your questions.
Are you a business looking to expand across the USA? Ask Dr. Love broadcasts in 5 of the top 10 U.S. radio markets, reaching 40 million listeners, offering you a unique opportunity to reach out to almost every adult listening group for a surprisingly reasonable rate. Everyone is concerned about their relationships. There is no other radio relationship advice show presented anywhere else in the USA. By advertising on Ask Dr. Love, your company can reach an audience that no other show touches. Visit AskDrLove.com and fill out the contact form to get in on this tremendous opportunity. Fill out the contact form at AskDrLove.com right now and get all the details. Will it be your company that gets to take advantage and grow your business? You're listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If your heart is still hurting over the bodily loss of your loved one, the reason is simple. We're not meant to be separated from those we love, and reconnecting is the only way to end the grief. But reconnecting and staying connected requires guidance. As a gift to her listeners, Dr. Turndorf is offering a limited number of discounted grief relief sessions to help you reestablish your relationship and resolve any unfinished issues. If you're ready to experience the healing and joy of reconnecting, visit drjamieturndorf.com to schedule your session. But don't wait, space is limited. Visit askdrlove.com/grief relief to find out more. And now, back to Dr. Turndorf.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ask Dr. Love. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf. We're talking about how to overcome the grief of a lost loved one. And I've given you a lot of pointers about how to overcome the false beliefs and the misconceptions that we all harbor. And these misconceptions and false beliefs block the reconnection. And really the only way to heal our grief is to reconnect, stay connected, and heal any unfinished business that will remain. I'm going to talk more about this in the weeks to come because there's so much grief in the world. But I want to get to the questions that you guys sent to me, that you asked me to answer. Now, I want to make sure, I have someone in the studio who said that she wanted to talk to me more at length about her question. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the question, then I'm going to give my answer, and then Liz will unmute you so that if you want to speak to me about my answer or ask me further questions, we'll be able to chat a bit back and forth. So here's the question. And the subject of the question is disgusted by partner's intimacy. Hi, Dr. Jamie. I'm in a difficult position. I have been with my partner for 7 years. I have never felt that in love feeling. I always thought that it would develop over time, but it hasn't. It is so bad that I kind of feel disgusted when he kisses me or wants to be intimate with me. I'd rather masturbate than have sex with him. We got a house and dogs together, not married, no children. Should I break up with him? How do I do it? He's such a good guy, and I do love him. All right. So here's my answer to you, Liz. First of all, this is a very sad question. And before we focus on the practical questions you asked about, should I break up? Should I move out? I want you to see clearer into what I believe are some of the deeper issues that are driving you. You said you don't feel in love. Now, not feeling in love doesn't fully explain why you feel disgusted by physical intimacy with him. Many people have sexual encounters with people they don't love, and they don't feel disgusted by the physical contact. So I'm wondering if you were sexually molested. And I'm saying this because I have had many patients over the decades who were molested and then felt disgusted by physical contact with another person. So I wonder if you unconsciously chose someone who you don't love so that your unconscious would have an excuse to create a cover story that you're disgusted because you don't love him. And the cover story protects us from having to face the real story, which is even more painful. So I'm inviting you to have the courage to get beneath what I think is a cover story and find out why you chose to marry someone you don't love and why you chose to marry someone who disgusts you physically. And I'd like, to ask you if you recall being molested as a young girl or even as a teen or a young woman. Was your first sexual encounter traumatizing? There's so much that we need to investigate. And I'm going to actually encourage you to come in and talk with me about it because you certainly deserve so much more than you're experiencing in life and love. So, Liz, can we unmute you so that you could talk to me about the questions that I asked? Are you able to come in, Liz?
Hi, Dr. Jamie.
Oh, hello. So good to hear your voice, darling. So what did you think about my response and my suspicion that you have been molested? Any thoughts about what I said?
Yeah, so it really made me, think a little bit deeper and really go back in time and just, reflect on my life's journey.
Right.
And I do realize that, when I was younger, you know, I did have some difficult relationships. So you were really spot on about questioning me around that. I think as a teen, you know, I did find myself in difficult situations where, you know, as a teen, you know, maybe you got drunk sometimes and then things happened and, you know, you kind of just, you know, were shocked that, you know, you couldn't stay sober and something like that happened to you. So I think those are
You're
some of,
jumping over. You said, I shocked that something like that happened to you. So you mean when you were a teen, you had you used alcohol and then came out of the experience being shocked that you had a sexual encounter while under the influence?
that's correct. I think, you know, you want those moments, you want to remember them and you want to be conscious in those moments. And, you know, you don't want
Liz,
to be taken advantage of. And those are
but
some,
were
yeah.
you?
Can you still hear me?
I hear you now. When you're talking about what you don't want, but the question is, you were taken advantage of, correct? You were mistreated.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I was correct in what I said to you, that you were sexually taken advantage of and mistreated, and the feelings around how you were violated have gone underground, Liz. And the way they are resurfacing is in the form of, I'm disgusted to be touched. And what happens is the brain is very tricky. It'll bury the feelings and then they come out sideways in our current relationships. So now it's, I'm disgusted to be touched by my partner, when we're not even talking about him. We're talking about all the men who mistreated you, not even him, the man you're with. And you've never really gotten in touch with how disgusted you are. And disgust, by the way, is a defense mechanism against rage. The disgust is called attitudinal aggression, Liz. Behind the disgust is, I'm enraged with these men who mistreated me. And I promise you that if you start to get in touch with how enraged you are, the feeling about feeling disgusted about having sex in general will dissipate. Are you there, Liz?
Yes. Yes, I'm here.
Are you having a feeling? Because you're kind of quiet now. This is, I'm kind of
Yeah.
jumping to the deep end here.
I'm wondering, you know, about some of my past relationships where I kind of didn't feel disgusted and why, you know, it's only this
Now,
specific one.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's very interesting, because what do you think is the reason?
Well, my first thoughts were that, you know, I was obviously a lot younger and while I the relationship played out quite differently to, you know, how this one started and, you know, where we're at. And it feels like it's a completely different type of love to that, you know, that young, if I may call it young love. So I don't know if that might be the reason.
I don't think so. I think sometimes what happens is, I'll use the example of a bag of garbage. We keep stuffing feelings, memories, and traumas into the bag of garbage until we can't stuff any more in, and then the bag breaks. So for a time, you were able to push down the feelings around your previous sexual assaults, pushing them down, and they were not in the forefront until finally you just can't push any more down and the bag breaks, and then you become symptomatic. The garbage starts pouring out. And now you're disgusted, because think about it. There's a disconnect here. You love this man. So to be disgusted by having physical contact with him is a disconnect, because we don't expect to be disgusted by someone we love. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not
Makes total
repulsive.
sense.
He's not repulsive. So it's more like something has caused your bag to break, because the brain can only push our traumas down and our feelings down for so long until we become symptomatic. Like, for example, Liz, I had a patient who was sexually molested and had no memory of it, no memory of the feelings, until she gave birth. And suddenly, the act of giving birth brought it all back to her. Her brain just brought it back at that moment. So there's a reason. It may be unrelated to this particular relationship. It may be your brain just said, I can't keep this in anymore, because the body wants to push poisons out. We want to detox. We get a splinter, we get an infection to push that splinter out, and the pus comes with it. Your brain is telling you it's time for me to deal with the feelings I buried around those past encounters where I was molested. And I promise you, once you start, like, for example, would you be open to trying something with me for a moment?
Yes, of course.
All right. So we don't have a long amount of time, but I would like to try this. Okay. I just want you to close your eyes, and I want you to visualize one of the guys who violated you. Get a picture in your mind. Can you?
Yeah.
All right. Now, if you close your eyes and you take a breath in, can you picture yourself in that scene where you're waking up, after having been under the influence, you didn't even know what you did?
Yeah.
Can you tap in and see whether there's a feeling of disgust that you were not aware of in that moment?
No. No, not in that moment.
You're shut down. So you see, there's an odd, again, disconnect between that event and you have no feeling around it. The brain will do this, Liz. It will just shut it down. Like, when women are being raped, they will often have the experience of being numb, outside themselves, on the outside looking in, no feeling at all. And your presentation reminds me of somebody who was raped. No feeling, no connection to anything. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So tell me what you're feeling right now.
I'm feeling a little bit sad. I
Okay,
think,
stay with that and say what it is.
Yeah, I think I'm finding it difficult to get words for what it is, but I think, you've placed some real honesty in, what is going on. And I think that honesty is what is actually making me sad, having to look back at that and see it for what it really is.
Yes, yes. And the thing is, your mind, just like somebody who was outright raped, has shut down all your feelings. And the fact that you're able to feel sad is like a good thing. It's a kind of awakening to yourself. And what will happen more now is, I believe, more feelings will come back. And, Liz, I do something through Ask Dr. Love. It's called the Discovery Session. I think this would be a very good session for you. It's a one-time session where we dig deeper into a trauma like this. And we go now past the feeling that you have been able to reclaim, the sadness, to find the rest of the feelings that got buried alive. And I am quite sure we're going to find tremendous feelings of disgust, not just disgust toward the men who violated you, but I'm afraid also that there is disgust that you are harboring toward yourself, that you've never really, what did you say, Liz?
No, definitely disgust towards myself as well.
That's right, isn't it? So when you feel disgust towards yourself for what you did, it's very easy for that feeling to kind of spill over onto, I'm just disgusted altogether. Sex is disgusting. The act is disgusting. What do you think?
It makes total sense.
Right. But you see, for you, Liz, a lot of it's in the head. It makes sense, but the feelings are just pushed aside. There's a lot of pain here. And the fact, Liz, that you even got drunk and engaged in these sexual encounters says there was pain to begin with. Otherwise, you wouldn't have behaved that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something happened when we drink to try to numb ourselves, when we fall into casual sexual encounters to try to numb out the pain, to feel some kind of connection in the moment. Do you know what was going on with you that led you to behave that way? What pain you were trying to escape?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think it has a lot to do with the relationship I have with my mother.
Of course.
So my mother does have a learning disability. So she has
I
always
understand.
been a distant parent, and I
There,
never
you don't even
really,
have to say more. We're coming to the end, my dear, but I'm
yeah.
starting to get a picture for you. And I'm getting it, that you didn't have that connection with your mom. There was a great hunger. Then it makes you fall prey to drinking and looking for love in all the wrong places. So the first thing I do want you to remember is that the unkindness you're showing yourself and the disgust doesn't need to be, because you did what you had to do to try to deal with the pain of a disconnected relationship with your mom. We're going to have to stop at this point, but I am offering you, to see me at the website, do a discovery session. We can do a lot of healing here, Liz, and I know that the disgust you feel that's just being misplaced onto your life partner will dissipate. This I know. All right, we have to end here. And I'm sure I'll be speaking to you again, Liz. That's all we have. Next week, I'm going to talk more about grief because there's so much in so many forms. See you next time on Ask Dr. Love.
Are you a business looking to expand across the USA? Ask Dr. Love broadcasts in 5 of the top 10 U.S. radio markets, reaching 40 million listeners, offering you a unique opportunity. Are you ready to reach out to almost every adult listening group for a surprisingly reasonable rate? Everyone is concerned about their relationships. There is no other radio relationship advice show presented anywhere else in the USA. By advertising on Ask Dr. Love, your company can reach an audience that no other show touches. Visit AskDrLove.com and fill out the contact form to get in on this tremendous opportunity. Fill out the contact form at AskDrLove.com right now and get all the details. Will it be your company that gets to take advantage and grow your business? You've been listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. Sign up for Dr. Jamie's newsletter at AskDrLove.com and receive her meditation audio that will guide you to open your heart and chill out during these stressful times.